The year is 1997. Manhattan is no longer a city, it's a prison. Walled off, locked down, crawling with gangs and killers. When Air Force One crashes in the middle of this nightmare, the US government has no choice but to call on the last man they'd ever want to depend on. But he also happens to be the only guy crazy enough to survive in there. An eye patch wearing ex-soldier turned outlaw, named Snake Plissken. Escape from New York is a 1981 movie that depicts a near-future America that has lost hope and descended into chaos. In this bleak depiction of future, the island of Manhattan has turned into a one giant prison, and the bright future is ever more distant. Like much of John Carpenter's work, this movie was more than just a pulpy sci-fi entertainment. Beneath the gunfights and neon shadows, there lies a vivid social commentary. Back in the 80s, when the movie came out, the Cold War was still in full effect and shaped how people around the world thought, felt, and lived. And that is how Escape from New York came to be. The director, a then young John Carpenter, wrote the script along with his friend Nick Castle back in 1976, with how the Cold War was affecting their lives and their fellow Americans in mind, addressing how can things go very wrong very fast if people let the government take full control and not hold it responsible for its actions. The very fragile relationship between USA and Russia and the looming nightmare of a nuclear war becoming a reality, along with the Watergate scandal and the people's distrust in government's authority and actions, all of that was enough for Carpenter to paint an alternate image of America in his head, in which the government is obnoxiously authoritarian, doesn't answer to its people, and turns whole cities into prisons. With movies like Halloween, The Fog, and Assault on Precinct 13, he wanted his next project to be something bigger, part sci-fi, part western, and part cyberpunk nightmare. For Escape from New York, Carpenter's vision was bold. The entire island of Manhattan turned into a maximum security prison. It's dystopian, cynical, and to be honest, a bit absurd. Maybe that's why it's one of the most memorable films of the 80s, and at the center of the movie is a snake. For this movie, Kurt Russell reinvented himself as the character Snake Plissken, breaking out of his rather clean Disney past that not many young talents are able to, and reinvented himself as Snake Plissken, the one-eyed anti-hero with a gravelly voice, who would become a template for countless characters in games, comics, and movies in the years to come. It's hard to imagine now, but Carpenter had to fight to cast Russell, pushing back studio peaks like Charles Bronson and Tommy Lee Jones. His vision was to create a modern-day Clint Eastwood, but darker, nastier, and more punk. In the making of the movie, Carpenter and screenwriter Nick Castle, who played Michael Myers in Carpenter's Halloween movie, admitted among other things that they were also inspired by pulp adventure novels. The New York they envisioned is not glamorous, it is the opposite, a nightmare, a reflection of the crime waves and urban decay Americans saw on the evening news. Back then, Carpenter, who had just come off the success of Halloween, was still considered an indie outsider. That's why the studio, AFCO Embassy, only agreed on a limited budget as opposed to the scale of the movie, for only $6 million. With such limited budget, the crew had to get creative and make every dollar count. Carpenter and his crew therefore leaned into their creativity, from using matte paintings and miniatures to portray the look of the city to optical effects, and a careful use of St. Louis as a stand-in for New York, after a devastating fire left the whole city blocks burned down and ready-made for his apocalyptic nightmare vision. That's the kind of filmmaking that made Carpenter special. He turned limitations into style and did the most with the least. In such productions, the cast have a very important role and can make or break the movie. Luckily, here every casting seems so fitting and pushes the narrative forward. Along with Russell, we have Lee Van Cleef, the classic Western villain, as the no-nonsense police commissioner. Donald Pleasence, yes, Dr. Loomis from Halloween, as the President of the United States. Ernest Borgnine as the cabbie, who lightens the mood and adds levity to everything he's in. Well, except the last one. Isaac Hayes, some of you might know him as the chef from South Park, who brings gravitas and menace as the Duke of New York, and Harry Dean Stanton and Adrienne Barbeau who round out the Rogues Gallery. It is a strange, eclectic group of actors, but together they give the film its identity and texture. One thing that I love about Escape from New York is that at the same time the movie is both stylish and scrappy. It is not a sleek blockbuster, the movie knows what it is and what it wants to say. A grimy action-packed B-movie that doesn't oversell, but over-delivers. Cinematographer Dean Cundey, who worked with Carpenter on Halloween and would go on to shoot Back to the Future, gives the film its moody, blue-tinted look. For the nighttime shots, they often filmed the scenes with a special low-light lens originally developed for the Apollo missions. That's how we got that eerie, futuristic glow in the movie. Given the very limited budget, for aerial shots of the movie, the crew used miniatures and matte paintings. And guess who made those paintings? Here's a fun bit of trivia for you. Those matte paintings were done by a then unknown James Cameron, who worked as a VFX artist at the start of his career, years before he brought Skynet online. Also, in one of the film's more clever tricks, the crew faked computer graphics. The famous wireframe cityscape that you see at times throughout the movie wasn't computer generated at all. It was a physical model built with cardboards and foam, then covered in reflective tape and shot under black light. The result looked cutting edge at the time, even though it was all practical. Along with the cinematography, the music made the movie come alive. Carpenter himself, with his recurring partner in music, Alan Howarth, composed the soundtrack on synthesizers, like most of his films. It's minimal and pulsing, almost hypnotic. It is as much a part of the atmosphere of the movie as are the shadows and firescapes. The cast, cinematography, and the music all together helped Escape from New York to age better with time, and eventually becoming a defining cult movie. With all the ingenuity and workarounds, the movie managed to take in $25 million on its $6 million budget. Not huge, but it's still a success in the eyes of the studio. And more importantly, the impact of the movie was huge. Snake Plissken's attitude and look, eye patch, leather jacket, and distrust of authority would echo through pop culture. In cinema, to be considered as a cult classic, you have to at the very least inspire future generations, and Escape from New York fits into that role perfectly. Hideo Kojima, creator of Metal Gear game series, admitted that Plissken was a direct influence on Solid Snake. Also, comics like Judge Dredd and G.I. Joe, and films like The Matrix, all owe Carpenter's dystopian playground to a degree. But while the audience and most of the critics were applauding the movie, some were divided on it. Some loved its atmosphere, while deeming the overall message of the movie too bleak. A few others, however, dismissed it as simply pulp trash. Roger Ebert himself, the famed critic, gave the movie 3 out of 4 stars, calling it a perfect piece of escapist entertainment, while acknowledging its rough edges. Carpenter once said that he never thought of Snake as a hero. He doesn't care about saving the world. He barely even cares about saving the president. And even then, that's for his own benefit. He just wants to survive and give it to the authority on the way out. And honestly, that's what makes Escape from New York timeless. It's not about hope or redemption. No, it's about rebellion. About hitting back the institutions that don't deserve the people's trust.
I'm going in.
40 plus years later, the movie still feels relevant. Maybe that's why we keep going back to the prison city, following Snake through the dark. Personally, here's where I land on it. Escape from New York isn't flawless. I know, I see the pacing that drags from time to time, or even the practical effects that haven't exactly held up to the times. But to me, none of that matters. The movie is alive with personality. It's angry, it's cynical, creative, and at the same time it's funny and full of heart. For me, Escape from New York will always have its place in the movie's Hall of Fame.
You're a
and is a reminder that no matter how restricted we are, you can always find a way to realize your vision and serve it well. So that's John Carpenter's Escape from New York. What do you guys think? Does it still hold up? Or is it just another 80s action flick that has aged out of relevance? Make sure to let us know your thoughts.
I thought you were dead.
But I heard you were dead.
Heard you were dead.
I heard you were dead.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out our other deep dive on another John Carpenter classic, 1988 hit They Live. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel, because the snake isn't the only cult hero we're escaping with this season. Take care everyone.